You gotta go and get to win and not conquer. I had to go out and get it without a sponsor. Kept it real, never crooked, yeah, that's honor. Now I can go out and get it how I want to. Hashtag bless, I choose.
What is up, Rumble? What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Ryan Matta Show. Thank you guys so much for joining us today on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. We are joined tonight by a special guest. We're going to talk about all things Bitcoin. We're going to talk about the financial ecosystem. We're going to talk about the Federal Reserve. We're going to talk about the debasement of your currency and this government printing away your life savings. And it seems like there's not a gosh damn thing you can do about it. Not a gosh damn person in Congress gives a crap about you, about me, about this currency, or about the future of our children. So do me a huge favor, folks. If you guys are not following Axel over at Financial Physics on X, if you want a level-headed, just raw 5-minute dopamine fix of your day and like a level-headed outlook on where economy is, how banking industry is working, how money works, how Bitcoin, what's going to happen if power goes out. So I found Axel by searching Bitcoin hashtags, and I came across one of his videos, and I was so mind blown at the work that this man is putting out. It's absolutely phenomenal. He's a great source of knowledge, and he'll go out of his way to help you. He'll reach out, you ask him a question. He does his best to keep up. So he's got a lot of great content. He also has a YouTube channel, and we know how they do over on YouTube. So if you guys get time, swing over here and smash that subscribe button. Let's help Axel grow this content. He's got thousands over on TikTok. All these other platforms are pushing out his content because it's great, phenomenal, good educational content. And of course, we're getting suppressed over here on YouTube. So I won't overtalk it. Axel, my friend, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Where are you from?
Well, I'm originally Washington State. I grew up in Seattle at Ground Zero for the 90s in the South Seattle area. So, and I moved to Texas, I want to say, coming up on 10 years ago, somewhere thereabouts.
Tell me a little bit about, did you get your financial background? Who educated you? Was it your parents? Were you raised by parents that were financial savvy, or where are you getting this skill set and this knowledge that you have?
This is strange. No one will probably believe me when I say this, but my background is for the most part self-educated. I grew up in kind of a I don't want to say a neglectful family is what I grew up with. Mm-hmm. And in that environment, you're kind of left to your own devices. And so I learned all this on my own. And I don't have any particular, there's no plaques on my walls. There's no, certificates. I don't have any, any credentials any third-party credentials or anointing from anybody in academia. Or to say that I know any of this. No, this is all stuff that I've done just over my years of experience, and it comes from being self-employed. So being as a business owner for better part of 30 plus years now, you learn quite a bit when you do this. When you do it day in and day out, and you get it from you find that a lot of the academic research or the academic position of business doesn't really carry through to the real world, and that's very common actually. Yep. So that's where I picked all this stuff up.
So tell me a little bit about we're taking a look at this financial landscape. You're talking about a lot of what's going on with the housing and the financial markets. Walk me through what you're seeing as far as what's going on out there in the world. What are should people be out there looking to buy a house right now and invest in real estate? Just give me a general overview of what's going on with this economy right now. What are you seeing out there?
Well, if I was just going to give you a 35,000 foot view, it would be something to the effect of, I think that if you're buying real estate that you intend to buy and live in, treat it like art. You shouldn't buy art to just buy it to invest in it. I don't think that's why you do that. You buy art because you like it and it moves you and it affects you. So I would treat a house that way as well. So if you're buying it for yourself and because you like it and you're going to live there forever, presumably, then hey, I can't touch you. But if the rental bros out there, the guys that are just buying this stuff up to do rental properties and what have you, I think you need your head examined at this point. Given the state of of not just, I mean, we just, well, I mean, look, well, what in the last 6 or 7 days, we've seen the squatter thing, which wasn't a thing 2 weeks ago, has now gone parabolic, and now it's everywhere. And so the people that are trying to do, and of course, especially if you're investing in, I did 2 videos on this on TikTok, actually, and I reposted them on X, but there were 2 instances. One was a guy in Austin, or in the Austin area, and paid $550,000 for a duplex. Another one was a guy somewhere, I don't know where he was, but I'm assuming probably Southern California, because he paid like $675,000 for a duplex. And when you do the numbers on these things, these are negative cash flow properties. And these are guys that are buying these things, presumably with the idea that, okay, well, real estate's going to go up in price. And that's, of course, I mean, as an old school investor myself, I would not buy a property based on what could happen. I'm going to buy something based on what is, not, because that's you're suggesting that you're betting, you're just betting on the future at that point, if you're just going to buy for appreciation. And it, of course, and you know how this is, and it isn't really appreciation. It's just devaluation of the currency. I mean, the house itself is not appreciating. It's going, in fact, it's actually depreciating, because you still have to actually do maintenance and upkeep.
And you have to pay taxes on it. Your house goes from 100 to 300,000. Now the government's making 3 times as much. It's a fucking racket, man. That's
exactly right. And this kind of thing that happens is, and I saw so much. I've been seeing so much of it. In fact, I did a commentary on that, where I just pointed out to anybody listening, like, if you're in this industry, you should probably really, unless your properties cash flow properly, and you're able to have, your rents that are in check. You're not trying to get $3,300 a month out of like a 322. If you can keep your rents in check, and you're in the properties right, keep them, and as long as you've got, solid tenants and you're not being abused. But these numbers I heard before, especially when I hear something like $675,000, and the guy thought he could get $3,000 a month per side. And of course he finds out the realistic number is closer to $1,500. And it's like, yeah, that's probably realistic. That duplex shouldn't have been $675. It should have been closer to like $275 is what that was really worth from an actual investor standpoint. And when I see these kinds of numbers, and I see it, the real estate gurus, the guys at the airport Marriott that just suck people in to go to these classes, and and I call it the false hope economy. There's a great false hope economy that's out there, where the business model is get people to believe you that they can actually do what you're doing, but what you're doing actually isn't duplicatable anyway. You can't do it again. And that's why I call it the false hope economy, because you're effectively selling them false hope that they're just gonna be able to sit on a beach and do nothing, and their rental properties are gonna make them rich. And that's just not the case. As someone who's repaired electrical and plumbing and kitchen problems and on and on, because I've owned multiple rental properties in the past, and as someone who's done all this stuff, it's what they're telling you is not real. It's not how that works. If you're running it like a business itself. And that's the part that's missing, is the business aspect of that. And of course, I'll tie it off, because I don't want to overtalk that, but I'll tie it off by just pointing out that from a business standpoint, when you're buying anything for that matter, that you have to make your money on, you make your money on the buy, not the sell. And when I hear these numbers that are they just blow me away, when I hear these $400,000, like, okay, and what's your cash flow position? Oh, I'm going to make $300 a month. Like, you're taking a $400,000 exposure to make $1,200 or whatever it is, 16, $400 a month on the deal. Yeah. I mean, you're just like, that is such a small return for the amount of risk proposition, and of course the only people that win on this are the banks.
Yep. No, you nailed that, man. And some of your work has been shared by the Cardone. So just randomly, like, we didn't plan this out. I want to throw this video at you and get some commentary on this, because this is Gary. He's going to be on the show Friday too. So if you guys want to hear from Gary Cardone, come join us. But check out this clip.
Hey, Greg, I'm really excited about this announcement we're getting ready to make tomorrow on our expansion on the media thing. I think, hiring like 2 or 3 more people, we might need to look at, renting an office space downtown. Yeah. I know you had some ideas about like doing a deal with some people that do that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I mean, we could rent, but there's opportunity downtown right now to buy. I think buying would be we could buy a spot and we could build out studios. Yeah.
Why the fuck would we buy a spot, dude? Look, Greg. We buy Bitcoin. We rent locations. Like when are we gonna get this, bro? We buy Bitcoin. We go rent a location from somebody that makes a nice little 4 or 5 or 6% yield on us. Okay.
Yeah.
We can get in and out of that location anytime we want. And we produce more activities. We generate some fiat. We take the fiat, remove it from the bank, and we deploy it into Bitcoin. We buy Bitcoin. We rent everything else, bro.
All right, I guess I'll look for a place to rent.
That's my man, dude. This is going to be awesome.
Give us some commentary on that one.
I didn't see the video. I just heard the audio.
Oh, damn. Okay. Well, he was just sitting there, but you heard it. You heard what he said, right? He was just sitting in his office talking to one of his employees, and the employee was like, I want to go buy something. And he just basically was like,
no, I wouldn't have. Yeah. I mean, that would be kind of how I would look at that. I don't know that I would be a player, put in a lot of money into something. Well, I guess it depends on what it is that you're buying, and every deal stands on its own. I mean, you know how this stuff is. If you've been, around finance for any length of time, you know how this is. Every deal has to stand on its own 2 feet. And if something does make sense, okay, fine. But in a lot of cases, from what I'm seeing right now, I don't know that I would be a player for something like that. But especially commercial real estate. Commercial's getting hit pretty hard right now. It's I mean, well, I think everybody objectively has seen what's happened with commercial real estate. I know that in my case, there was a building where I had my restaurant, and there's parts of that strip mall that had been empty since the 80s. Like for real. Like, and I'm not exaggerating. Like they've been empty since the 1980s. So 40 years. So somebody's been paying on that building in taxes and on and on for 40 years, and it's empty. I mean, and that's in Texas. That's in South Texas. That's Boomtown, USA. Right. I mean, that's everybody and their brothers decided to move here for some reason. Yeah. And they were still can't lease out all these spots. So, and in fact, I see this when I kind of question it when I go into some of these businesses that are especially large franchises, that I wonder how the hell they stay open, because it's like, how are I know what the math is as a owner myself. I know how much cash flow you have to bring in to justify your existence here. And when I kind of look at the numbers, I'm like, how are you staying open? Or you found somebody with some deep pockets to just keep weathering through, figuring that, okay, well, it's going to come back in 3 or 4 years, and you're just believing whatever salesman sold you the franchise for $500,000 or whatever. And whereas if I were advising somebody, I'd probably tell them to run screaming. Like, dude, I don't know, man. I mean, and especially with the franchises, because you don't own anything. You don't own the name. You don't own the product. You don't own the building. You don't own the real estate. You own no part of it. You're just, you're a glorified manager at that point.
Explain that. So you say you're a glorified manager. I love that. I actually watched that video that you put out, and you don't own anything, right? The government owns it. You just basically rent it from the bank. Break that down for us a little bit.
Which part? You're talking about like a burger douche franchise, or are you talking about just the idea of kind of fake ownership?
Yeah, like where people in your video you were talking about, like, you think you own the bank, but the bank doesn't give a shit about you. They don't care if you make profit. You are just taking the.
Oh yeah. That was okay. That was like a few days ago. Yeah. I was trying to break down an idea there of trying to explain that you making money is not on the bank's radar. They don't really care if you make money. What they care about is that you pay the taxes. What they care about is that you maintain it. You take all of the risk, because so for them, from a banking standpoint, you know how this works, and I don't know if everybody knows how this works, but I mean, this is how this works. When a bank lends out money, they're just lending out principal, and they're lending it out at like a 9-to-1 ratio, or worse in some cases. I'm just going to go with 9-to-1. So if they lend out, $400,000, they can't have that asset, whatever the underlying asset is, whatever it is. They can't have the asset in terms of nominal value go to $200,000 because now they're exposed. So they have to have these prices constantly going up, and it's horrible. It's so destructive because it doesn't allow for market corrections. It means that the market can never correct, which means that you have inflation, which means that you end up effectively wiping out your poor and middle class.
Yep.
What's that?
Priced out.
Yeah. So anyway, this is that's pretty much it. And then inflation has to go somewhere. I use the example of a water weenie. I mean, you squeeze one side, it comes out the other. And so when you squeeze people long enough, you end up squeezing out the poor and the middle class. They're the ones who eat all of this inflation. Mm-hmm. Well, so when someone tries to lever up and buy all these assets, they're taking the risk. And of course, they got your down payment. They got, you have assets. And of course, like this is how I would tell anybody this. If you want to get a loan at a bank, there's only one thing you have to do. Is really that's it. It's just one thing you have to be able to do is prove that you have more to lose than the bank does. That's it. Credit score doesn't mean shit. None of this stuff means anything. If you have more to lose, and the bank, more importantly, if the bank believes you have more to lose than they do, they'll do that deal because then they know that they're covered. They see it and go, okay, well, I guess we don't have anything to lose here. We got this retard to give us $100,000 on a $400,000 loan. So we're up $100K, and we're gonna lever that 9 times out. So we're gonna loan out $900K based on that anyway. So they're covered for the bank principals are for the most part covered. Whereas you making profit on your deal, whatever it is, whether it's rental properties or what, it doesn't make any difference what it is not on their. They really don't care. It's it is a one-sided thing. Mm-hmm. And in the case of someone like, and this is where Bob Kiyosaki, for example, Mr. Real Estate himself, right? Bob, mm-hmm. he points this out. If you owe the bank $1 million, for example, that's your problem. If you owe the bank $10 billion, that's their problem.
Yep.
And that is a true way of looking at it. So if you put the ball back in their court, because that will break them. 10 billion, as we saw with several of the banks, in Silicon Valley, right? You owe them $100 billion. That's curtains for them. If you can't pay that back, they're done.
Yeah, it's funny.
They're going to have to go run to Chase to be bailed out.
Yeah, Grant Cardone. I remember watching Grant Cardone after the 2008 crisis, and he goes, "You know what? When everything hit the fan, he goes, I owed these banks $50 million, and the banks didn't give a crap about me." And he goes, and I learned a very, 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 very valuable lesson. He goes, next time, I'm going to owe them $500 million, right? And that's when $500 million back then in 2008 was a lot of money. Right now, $500 million is kind of like you're just an average Joe, but that's a regular fine apparently in New York.
Apparently that's a parking fine in New York. Apparently,
yeah, no shit. So, what's your outlook on Bitcoin, my man? I love the work that you're putting out there. What is your portfolio allocation? What's your overall thesis on Bitcoin?
That's a big question. That's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah,
I'll do my best to. Yeah, I'll do my best to try and encapsulate it. I probably break with the pack on some of the more parochial Bitcoin investors out there. I view Bitcoin as a currency. Now, of course, I hold full disclosure. I hold Bitcoin. I hold it off the internet. I self custody the whole bit, and I don't do a lot of trading of Bitcoin. I have no problem spending Bitcoin, as a currency, but I try not to prop up the dollar if I can at all avoid it. And but how I view Bitcoin, because I view it as a currency, I view it as a replacement for the dollar. Now, I know this is where I get a whole bunch of controversy. There's a whole bunch of people that will pile on. In fact, my DMs will be full of people, I'm sure. It'll say, well, you can't scale, you can't do this. You're going to like, okay, well, yeah, but I think you're missing the broader point. The broader point is that with a debt-based currency like the US dollar, which is effectively just slavery, it's all it is. It's a way of enslaving people. Bitcoin undoes all of that. And it undoes it like nothing that this world potentially has ever seen, in fact, because the challenge, of course, and this is, once again, this is where I'm going to be the controversial guy on this. Bad money, for the most part, if we understand the Austrian economics, bad money chases out good money because good money gets hoarded. And that's exactly what has happened with Bitcoin, with gold. It doesn't mean just pick a hard currency.
Yep.
People hoard them because bad money has chased it out. And we have this very arduous task of trying to chase bad money out and replace it with good. And that's hard. That's hard, because the addiction to something like fiat currency or a debt-based currency is so strong. And of course, why is it strong? Well, of course, it's strong because it allows people to have this fantasy of endless resources, this fantasy land. And I pick on the left and the right equally on this one. I'm no respecter of persons when it comes to this. You know, the left with their ideas of fantasies of like, let's just have print money to pay for this program or that program. And the right with, let's just print money to pay for prisons and all kinds of other stuff, military spending and what have you. And it's like, there is no money to pay for either one of these things. Well, of course, if someone says that, they're not popular with anybody. You know, you're not going to be popular with either side on this one, because it goes against the illusion. And the reality is like, no, there isn't really any money to pay for any of this stuff. And it always comes down to that. I think there was, I think it was like the old CEO of C-SPAN, the old producer of C-SPAN, said pretty much the same thing. And I never forgot that interview where he's like, because they asked him if he was Republican or Democrat, and he's like, I don't really care. I mean,
Yep.
It doesn't really matter to me. My question is, how are you going to pay for any of this? And that's exactly right. That's how I see it. How are you paying for all of this? Because there is nothing free. And if it's like, well, the idea is, oh, we can tax the rich or what have you. Like, well, no, you can't. There's not enough money there to tax. Even at 100%, there's not enough money to cover any of this. So, so for Bitcoin, because to stay back on topic, I think that it is an inevitability. Excuse me. I think it's an inevitability that people start to see the value. The question that I have is when they're going to see the value as a currency that can't be counterfeited, which, as far as I'm concerned, to me, that's the supreme value, is that you can't counterfeit it. With gold, as an example, it either weighs or it doesn't. It's either pure or it's not. You either have it or you don't. That's it. That's the rules. Bitcoin simplifies it and says you either have it or you don't. That's it. Because it's because it's digital and it's based on the blockchain. So you're looking at this and going, okay, well, if you're paying somebody to do labor, you can't then rob them back with inflation. And that's so, like, if somebody pays you $10 an hour, this is a good math, a very simple math equation. If I pay you $10 an hour to do something, and then I inflate everything by 20%, I'm effectively paying you $8 an hour. That's the effect. And Bitcoin ends that. It says that you can't inflate it now. Now you can, in fact, it actually creates the opposite. It creates a deflationary situation because you have a natural market forces where prices tend to come down. It takes enormous effort to make prices go up. It takes huge effort to make prices go up. Prices in the marketplace want to come down because you've got assuming you have fair competition, not this
Correct.
Weird subsidized horse,
Yep.
or whatever.
Yeah,
not any of this.
You want. You can say whatever the fuck.
Okay,
you
very
want.
good. Yeah, not any of this weird horse shit that we have now, where we're subsidizing giant companies, and we're subsidizing. You do the mechanism where you counterfeit a bunch of money, you push it through 5 or 6 different shell corporations offshore, and then it makes its way back to the stock market, and it props up these companies and puts more money into these companies than it ever had any business of actually being there. And so they look more profitable than they actually are. And I'm talking about pretty much every company in the U.S. that's traded publicly, and that's a problem. Bitcoin ends all of that, and so that is when you think of the implications. And I did about 19 sessions, the first 19 videos I ever did. They're on YouTube. The primer video through session 18, where I tried to explain, because it's a lot of foundation, and I tried to put forth the idea from the perspective of somebody who didn't really know any of this, who didn't really understand how any of this stuff works. And I tried my best, and I probably suck at it, but I did what I could. And trying to explain the implications of this, and the analogy I give, if you permit me, I'll give you the analogy. If you think of, you're familiar with what a Fibonacci sequence of number is, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
That's 1 + 1 is 2, 1 + 2 is 3. And then, 2 + 3 is 5. And the analogy I use is that of a Fibonacci sequence. What if we took 3 + 5, which is the next part of the scenario of our sequence, and changed that number to a 6, and said that's 3 + 5 = 6. In other words, so it's incorrect math. But then we continue on with our sequence. So we go 5 + 6 = 11. Now, 5 + 6 = 11, right? Correct. It is. That equation in a vacuum is correct, but the sequence is wrong. And that's what I this is what I liken Bitcoin to. Imagine a Fibonacci sequence that is, I don't know, 50,000 places wrong. So you have 1 + 1 is 2, 1 + 1 is 2, 1 + 2 is 3, 3 + 2 is 5. And then we have this error way up here in the beginning. And now we've continued 50,000 places beyond that. So you're with me so far. I hope everybody, you're imagining this with me. Imagine now correcting that one problem that was wrong way back. Now imagine the implications of what that means. It means that every one of those successive equations that went 50,000 places out is now wrong. And you're going to correct one thing. And when you correct that one thing, you now have a whole bunch of problems that come crashing down at that point. And that's how I choose to use the analogy I use to try and explain what the real deep, not just financial, but social ramifications of Bitcoin. Bitcoin corrects all this shit. It really does. It corrects this boss babe nonsense. It corrects the college lie. Because then it puts it back on the schools. Like, okay, what exactly are you teaching, and why should I give you any of my real money, especially when you know it's real money and you can't replace it, because it follows the law.
Government, which is our tax dollars, right?
Exactly.
Fuck you.
Exactly. You clearly, that's just it. I mean, from a government standpoint, like, you clearly have no problem at all printing pallets of $100 bills to send all over hell and gone. You clearly have no problem with that. So, so Bitcoin ends all of that craziness. And so I could certainly see why not just the bankers, but bankers, politicians, academics, policy wonks, I could certainly see why they would not want something like Bitcoin, because it would not only be a threat to their, it's a direct existential threat to their existence and to their finances, but it has the very serious possibility of actually correcting the world, very quickly. And of course, I would argue that none of those problems, by the way, the social problems or financial problems, I would argue that none of those problems ever went away. They've just been papered over with fiat currency, because we don't have to think about it when we can print money. So we don't have to. So let me give you an example, just briefly. Let's say you have a criminal, a bad guy, right, so to speak, right? A guy goes out and he does some kind of crime. I don't know, steals a car or something. How do we handle that in a society that doesn't have that doesn't have fiat currency? How do we handle that? Because someone has to. If you want to say, well, we need to incarcerate them, okay, well, someone has to pay for that. And if you actually have to pay for it, it starts becoming one of these things where people take it a bit more seriously. They take their civilization a bit more seriously. They take the idea of how they're upbringing children more seriously. Because how do you pay for that? And how and why is it that, and like, why is it my fault? Or why is it my problem? I'm on the other side of the country. Why is it my problem that I have to pay for the problems of some inner city? that clearly fucked their entire infrastructure up. Why should I have to pay for that?
Yep.
Well, see, because of something like a Bitcoin, it brings that into very sharp relief. Like very quickly, it brings all that up. And I would argue that those problems never went away. They've always been a problem throughout all of societal history, throughout all of recorded human history. Those problems have never gone away. They've just been ignored. We've been able to ignore them by saying, okay, we're just going to incarcerate everybody and just print money to keep them there. Or we're just, we'll enslave them, or we'll do this, we'll do that. And it's like, but if you actually have to pay for that, it changes the deal entirely. And if there's no more subsidies, for example, to have all these crazy gimmicks that are out there, if there's no more subsidies for all that, then I think that I don't think that Bitcoin brings chaos. I think that Bitcoin clarifies what was already there and that has been ignored for millennia. With the advent of counterfeiting currency, because how this works. It's ever since the bankers realized that nobody comes into the bank to take all their gold out at one time. So we can obviously loan more gold than we have on deposit, and ever since people realized it's been downhill ever since. Bitcoin ends that too, because it isn't as fungible as something like gold. And I would argue that that's actually what makes it stronger because of that. Gold's fungibility is awesome, but Bitcoin is just fungible enough that you can still use it privately, but it's not so fungible that that particular blockchain can just disappear and be lent to somebody, and they won't know any better. Yeah, they will. They absolutely will. They'll know that you took their money and did something with it without permission. They'll know.
Yep.
So it's not like you could just melt it down. It's like the old days of the National Socialist Party, the so-called Nazi gold, right? Well, all you have to do is just melt it down into bars, and nobody knows. Yeah, that's you can't do that with Bitcoin. You can't do that. So that's the implications are phenomenal. When you really stop and think about it, it's actually mind-blowing. And it's a matter of, I think, getting people to really take the time to sit down and process that, because it's really something that when you really do think about it, you're like, oh my God, that would change absolutely everything. And it absolutely would. So
I guess what you're kind of saying there is it basically is ultimate accountability for Washington, D.C. and the swamp, which, in my personal opinion, is kryptonite to these people. Like, they talk about accountability for Washington, D.C. It'd be ultimate accountability. So what does that look like? The interview I did this morning, they said that, Bitcoin is the Trojan horse of freedom, and it's the most peaceful revolution in world history. The horse is in the gate, right? BlackRock and the largest corporations in the world are buying Bitcoin, right? Like, we've breached the gate. Yeah. We've entered the financial system. We've introduced something in a sly, roundabout way that nobody can stop, no matter how hard they want. So what do you think this looks like, as far as are they going to start trying to ban private wallets? Are they going to try to make it so that you can't hold in self-custody your own Bitcoin? Where do you see this playing out, and how long do you think it's going to be before enough of this country is thinking like me, like you, were like, okay, we're allocating as much of our fiat dollars to this. Like, we're trying to get out there and mine fiat, as they call it, right? We're out there trying to work a 9 to 5. Mine this fiat, put it into an asset that's hard, that nobody can print away. What do you think is going to come from the government, and how long do you think it takes for the rest of the country to understand what we understand about money?
That's the real question. The latter part of it. I'll address the first part really quickly. And so the question is that how do I think that they're going to treat this? I don't think they can do anything to stop it at this point. I really don't think there's anything they could really try. They don't have the non-binary pink-haired person power to do anything at this point.
So true.
So I mean, like, the government now is not the old school days of the G-men at the 50s kind of thing, where you had these dedicated guys out there at midnight trying to break down some leads and so on. They don't have that nowadays, man. People at beer 30, those people are nowhere to be found. And
So
you have a handful of elite psychopaths that'll kick in doors and murder everybody, but you don't have those dedicated guys that are really, really, really smart. I don't think that those guys exist in government any longer, because frankly, they can make more money outside of it. Like, why would they go into it? So, do I think that they could try it? Maybe they could. I think that now you mentioned BlackRock and you mentioned Wall Street. Now I will address this, and this is another thing. This is actually my concern. I actually do have a concern on this one. And that is the number of people that are continuing to prop up the dollar. Now, when I say that, I used I in an old video, I don't know, like 3 weeks ago or so, I gave the example of tried to use this as a teaching tool. Why does Vladimir Putin, want people to buy rubles first in order to buy Russian oil and gas? It's because not only does it give him privilege to export, the inflation of Russia, just as it would for any other country that you had to buy their currency first, but it continues to prop up the ruble. Okay, so in the case of Bitcoin, every time someone says, "Okay, I'm gonna sell my, I'm gonna sell, I don't know, 600,000 sats to the exchange, and then I'm gonna take, whatever, $400 or $500, and I'm gonna go do something." You have to first buy dollars, and that, I think, is where the real challenge is going to come from, is convincing people to not switch over to dollars, to not try. You can't prop the dollar up. So my only concern, my worry, is that as people do that over time, if they keep thinking in terms of dollars, and this is definitely an issue. This is a mild criticism, if you will, mild for my Bitcoin people. This is a mild criticism of some of the Bitcoin guys out there, where it's like, stop thinking of Bitcoin in terms of like value based on dollars. You have to get past that, because if you always think about it in terms of, oh, it's worth this much, and then you're processing in dollars, you will forever be a slave to this goddamn system. Forever. You will forever be a slave to their system. And give it enough time, if everybody has to keep trading their Bitcoin in for dollars, eventually the Bitcoin will all end up in the hands of the government or Wall Street, which there's no difference between the two anymore. They're almost indistinguishable. I don't think you can put a cigarette paper between the two of them anymore. So you don't want, so mathematically, you don't want to do that. You want to, you not only do you want to hold your Bitcoin, but you want to be able to, that if you're spending your Bitcoin, you want to make sure that you're spending it with people who also understand that Bitcoin, it cannot go to these people. It can't go to them, because it's just going to keep propping up their currency. In fact, it ends up giving credence to their currency, which is complete garbage. It's objective, and I say that objectively. I'm not saying that as like, oh, it's my opinion. That I'm like, dude, no. I mean, I think that I could make I think that not just myself, but tons of other economists out there can make the case the dollar's a garbage currency. It's probably the most worthless currency that's ever existed. Even the Romans had to mint garbage coins. Even they had to come up with bronze. My God, nowadays they just type in whatever they want into a computer, and then just poof, it exists. It's so even the Romans had to obey some laws of physics.
Yep.
And so that's my only concern. To the first point, that was my only concern, is the number of people that are continuing to prop up the dollar by exchange. So it's like, I would love to see the idea of an actual Bitcoin economy, but the trick is going to be getting people away from this mentality of, oh, Bitcoin's $70,000 for a whole coin, or whatever it is, 69.8 or whatever it is right now. Instead, start thinking in terms of, okay, I have X amount of sats. What should this be buying in the marketplace? If you were to take out the world's wealth, all of the world's wealth, and you divide it by 2.1 quadrillion, what does that actually buy you? Quite a bit. When you think about it in those terms, and especially when you start removing all the middlemen You know, the difference between, you know, of course, the middle class and the middleman class. When you start removing all your government people, your bankers, and everybody else who's just jammed themselves into every goddamn transaction, when you remove those people, you know, then my God, you actually have a lot of money. You know,
Yep.
you know, imagine if you lived on your gross income, right? That's a good way to look at this. Imagine if you lived on your gross income, you had no taxes due, you had no loans due, and you owned all your shit. How close to retirement are you? You're pretty goddamn close. I mean, I mean, in America, if you own your house, your car, and you own all your stuff, and you don't have any taxes or loans or anything, I mean, you could work at a goddamn gas station. You know, you don't have to make that much money to live at that point. Actually, what would be considered a very good life.
What did you say the amount of Bitcoin you needed to have there? Sorry, I didn't hear you. I missed that part. You said if you have how much Bitcoin?
Oh, no. I was saying if you had your you know, your house, your car, and everything all paid for, and you didn't have any debt or bills. I wasn't clarifying a specific amount of Bitcoin. I was just pointing
I thought
out
I missed
that,
something there. I was like, okay.
No,
cool.
no. You didn't miss anything. No. I was just clarifying that, you know, taking the idea of the currency out of it altogether and just saying, hey, if you have this, well, then how much money do you really need? Not very much. Not a whole lot. And of course, and if you start thinking in terms of Bitcoin, when you start dividing it among the population, I don't know, let's 7.5, 8 billion people. It's what somebody did the math on it one time. I saw it was something
what is
like
it? There's 8 billion people you're saying in the world.
Yeah, if you take 2.1 quadrillion, and that's the max number right now. Of course, a lot of that's already lost. They estimate 4 million Bitcoin are basically lost into the ether forever. But so if you take 2.1 quadrillion, you divide it by 8 billion, it's something, what is it, like 190,000 sats or something like that. It's not.
Let me divide by 21 million. I got that number right. Yeah, that's only 380. I think I did that wrong. I'll pull it up. You can keep talking. Let me get out the better calculator.
Yeah, but it's a fairly small number. And so then of course you start factoring in infrastructure and having to do business and you know, things of that nature, you find that, you know, your currency, you know, your Bitcoin, your hard currency goes so much further in terms of, so you don't have, and it's just like, that's why you don't have to make a huge return. You know, people nowadays, they think in the terms of like, oh, I've got to beat the street. I've got to make a 12% return. The only reason you have to make that return is because your currency is devaluing. That's the only reason you have to make the return. Yep. If you had a 0% inflation, then you don't really need to make any return on your money to have, you know, to have the exact same spending power. You're actually better off. You're significantly better off. In fact, you can go on vacation, not have to worry about, you know.
So if you do 8 billion divided by 21 million Bitcoin, right? That means only, if I'm looking at this number right, only 380,952 people could own one whole Bitcoin.
That's probably right.
That's insane.
If you took,
somebody just typed in the live chat right now, and they said that only 200,000 people in the world own a full Bitcoin today. So that means that's pretty crazy to think about. Like, if you own a full Bitcoin today, you might be in the top 200,000 richest people in the world 5 or 10 years from now.
Yeah, when you think about that, and that's if you take, you know, again, it's you have to chase out the bad money. Like I think I mentioned this to Marty Brent when I was on his show. I had mentioned that this is the first time that we're trying to chase bad money out of the system, and I don't know that it's possible. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to certainly do my part. And I know that there's a lot of other guys out there that will certainly do their part, but it's going to be a question of can people get past the idea of fiat and the ease of it, right? I mean, it's like fast food, right? I mean, fast food is easy, right? It's easy just to go through the drive-through and get a ham and eggs hockey puck and you're down the road. Okay, it's easy to do that. But it's significantly harder if you actually have to do all that stuff yourself and make it and toast everything. It's a lot harder to do. It's just more time. So the question is, you know, are people willing to say, okay, hold on, I'm gonna not go down this road of the super easy way. So, a good example of this would be like the Amish. If you're up in the Northeast, you kind of know what I'm talking about. I mean, if you've been to like Ohio or rural Ohio or Pennsylvania, you see the Amish out there. It's a hard life, right? I mean, but there are perks to it.
Yeah,
In
no
that,
autism, no disease, no
they
cancer.
don't have any. Yeah, they don't have a bunch of.
Imagine that.
They need now. I would argue that they need to have a little bit more diversity in the gene pool and stuff, because I've seen a few of them up close, and they could use, but and I'm not picking on them. I'm really not picking on them. But they're, for the most part, they actually are onto something with this. I'm not saying people have to give up their car and give up all their worldly possessions and follow me. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's the way to kind of think about it, is like not taking the easy path. And so many of us are. This is all people, of course, because we're human beings, and because we're energetic, rest is our natural default setting. Okay, and not to get all super physicist on this, but I mean the rest is your default, right? You will always take the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. This is one of these things where you have to make where not just a person, but a large number of people have to make the conscious decision to say, I'm not going to take that easy road. We're going to have to take. We're going to have to take a road, and we're going to take some kind of a principled stand here, and say we can't just do this, because it is a slippery slope, and it's one of the reasons why I'm somewhat forgiving, believe it or not, to some of the early bankers. To some of the early bankers, it really is the case, because they make this astute observation. They say, well, no one comes in and picks up all this gold all the time, and we put out all these claim checks, and no one will know. No one's going to know that we put out, an extra, few 100,000 claim checks. No one's going to know. I mean, especially on a large population, no one's going to know it. And think of the good we can do, right? That's how the road to hell is always paved with good intentions. That's how people think, right? That's how all of our minds work, because all of us we're all heroes in our own little world, right? That's how we all are. That's just people. Not to get all psychological about it, but it's how we all are. And we start thinking, man, what we could do, the good we could do with it. Even though, but you're causing a distortion in the marketplace, and you're doing enormous. It's the Keynesian idea, where you break the window and see, the glass man's rich now. But you're causing a distortion in the marketplace to do this,
Broken window
but
fallacy.
It's tempting. It is. It's a logical fallacy, but it's tempting. It's always very tempting to want to do good, but unfortunately, not to overuse a Lord of the Rings analogy, but it's it through the ring of power, it brings disaster, because that's the nature of it. And
no, Michael
and
Saylor,
before it.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I want to add into there. No, you said everything's the road to hell is paved with good intention, and Michael Saylor says it best. George Washington died because doctors bled him to death, right? He was sick. They thought they were helping him, and they drained one too many quarts of blood. We're talking about the most respected and most powerful man in the world at that time, right? And doctors bled him to death, right? So there's good people out there that actually have good intentions and think they're doing good.
Oh, absolutely.
But they do very, very bad things, right? And people die from it. And that's what we're seeing right now. So I just want to throw that in there.
And he's right about that. Absolutely. That's a great analogy. That really is. That's a spectacular analogy. But yeah, that's correct. Is that causes just so many problems when you try to do something that's going to be, this is going to benefit so much of society, but you have to ask yourself instead of what. And that's the part that gets forgotten, is that this is going to be such a great deal. But instead of what? That you're removing innovation, natural organic innovation from the marketplace to replace it with a synthetic, which is what we have now, which is why society now feels so plasticky and synthetic. Mm-hmm. It's why it's weird when you have a conversation with someone that has life in their eyes, and you're like, it's almost like surreal. It's like,
It is.
because there is so much of that fake plasticky existence that's out there, and it happens to the best of us, and we all, I think a lot of us get caught up in this, and like I said, it is, and it's because it's easy, and it is easy, and that's the part that's going to be so my suggestion is that that's going to be the hardest part about this. Somebody had asked a question on Twitter, and I told him, and it's right, it's this exact question that you asked me, actually, where it brings it up and stuff. And he was asking about, like, what happens if, if everybody starts hoarding Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, that is a problem. It is. It's the same problem with gold. It's the same problem with any hard currency. You want it to circulate, and in my, because I see it as a currency. A currency is sort of the lifeblood. It's the flow that you're wanting in an economy. It's what gives it life. And anytime, just like in the body, right? If your blood pools in your body, it's because you're dead. That's not a good thing. That's not good. If your blood stops circulating in your body, you have a huge problem. And you've got about 30 seconds or so, and so and I would say the same thing about an economy. An economy has to be alive, and not this zombie bullshit Frankenstein economy that we have now. Because that's all this is. This is just cobbled together nonsense where we're just going to keep propping values up that are completely arbitrary. What was that? There was you probably seen this in some of the news. Some of these office buildings in San Francisco, you practically can't give them away anymore. Like, who the hell wants them? Nobody. They're not really worth it. The cost of maintenance, reminds me of that. Years ago, I think it was like in 2010 or something like that, Leona Helmsley's estate was for sale up in Greenwich, Connecticut, and they started off wanting like $150 million for it, and they could never find a buyer for it until, I don't know, somebody bought it for an undisclosed amount of money, but it was not anywhere near what they was, like 10% of what they wanted, and it was because the estate was one of these things where it's like, even if you gave me the house, even if you gave it to me for free, I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford the taxes. I couldn't afford the maintenance, the maintenance, and the staff involved to maintain the grounds. Like, dude, come on. And that's just it. So I think that once things are flowing, then I think we're really going to see something. And I think that's actually in terms of the guys out there that want to hear some really good positive stuff about Bitcoin. I would say this. Once Bitcoin starts flowing in an economy, I think that then you're going to see some serious shit. I personally put the single Satoshi, with the spending power of what a $100 bill has today. And I base that on the fact that a house prior to 1913 cost what, $5,000, $3,000 to $5,000, depending on where you were. So. What does it cost now? It's 100 times more for that same thing. Well, wow. So I times it by 100. Yeah, it's amazing when you think. It blows your mind when you think about it.
So to put that in perspective, people that are watching this, they don't own Bitcoin, right? There's like 1,500 Satoshis in every dollar right now. Yeah. I spent $5,000 and I got 6.7 million Satoshis, and that was when Bitcoin was at 72,000, right? So think about that. Like, so many people, like he said, you got to stop thinking in dollar values. And I've pretty much redenominated my entire life on the value of sats, right? I see something that's $5. I'm like, oh shoot, that's like 10,000 sats, right? Like, I'm not going to waste 10,000 sats on that piece of shit. Those 10,000 sats, like you say, are going to be $100 bills. So as soon as you start making that paradigm shift and it makes you not want to go, oh yeah, I need a pair of sunglasses. I'm just going to get this $20 pair at the gas station when I could just wait till tomorrow and get one for $6.99 on Amazon, right? Like, pay attention to every dollar. And Andrew Tate says it best, whether you like the guy or not, he's really smart. When you go into a business, think about how that fucking business got your money. Why did you go buy a coffee at Starbucks and not buy one at McDonald's, right? Or at the gas station for 99 cents? Or why the fuck did you make one at home for 25 fucking cents?
He's exactly right
how
about
are these businesses fucking sucking your money from you? And then you learn that and you realize that, And then not only does it make you save more money, but then you go, wow, you get a lot of ideas. You're like, okay, this business is doing this. Maybe I could do that. And there's all these flaws. Like they didn't fucking pump my gas for me or whatever it is, right? They didn't fucking, put a cherry on top of my latte. Maybe I can sell fucking lattes or lemonade. It doesn't matter what it fucking is, or you can flip shit on eBay, but like the concept is fucking
exactly.
pay attention, right?
Yeah, that's just it. When you have a real and honest currency, it tends to make the product quality increase. The product increases in quality, the service increases, everything increases in quality. Because if I'm, I don't have a problem spending money. I have no problem spending money. And in fact, this is the part I wanted to address, was that, because they're like, well, but how would you, how are people supposed to have Bitcoin in the future if everybody hoards it all up? Like, well, I personally have no problem spending money. None. You can ask my wife. I have no issue spending money
and
at all.
Here's one other thing,
particularly on four-wheel drive parts.
They gave us that $1,300. How many people put that into Bitcoin versus how many people spend it, right? When you get rich and you make more money and you're actually having more money, how much more money do you spend, right? Like, so there might be a period of time where you're hoarding Bitcoin, but it gets to a point where you start to become wealthier, right? And everything around you gets cheaper. So then you're incentivized to spend, right? There might be a period where people hoard, but I think there's going to come a time where we're like, cool, let's spend this Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, because wealth maxes out. I know. In fact, I know I've heard Andrew Tate say something to that effect. I've been saying that for years. Yep. But yeah, wealth maxes out at a certain point. It doesn't. Cars only get so nice. Houses only get so big and beautiful. Beds only get so big and soft. Pieces of ass only get so good looking. At a certain point, you max out on all of that. It was the truth. You max out on everything, and once you do that, then you have you can arrive at another set of values, which is to say, okay, well, hold on now. I mean, I've got all of my stuff done. Well, now I can actually focus maybe on helping some other people, and that's where I think a true renaissance actually takes place. Is when people start focusing, when they're able to take their focus off themselves, and they're able to actually focus it more outward. And then that's when they can also start to do things where they sponsor projects that are beautiful for the sake of beauty, art for the sake of art. Architecture that's not fucking hideous. This garbage, goddamn. Oh my God! I don't even get me started. Like
garbage.
I can't even. I cannot stress to you enough how much I hate what's been done to architecture.
Look at the 50s or back in the days. Like there's kings and these people that started projects that they would never see. Like imagine dumping billions, or at the time was probably equivalent to billions of dollars, right, into building a cathedral that won't be finished for 200 years. So like you need to plan to be there. Like your kids are going to take that on. And it was just this glorious, monumental. And that was back when they had hard currency, right? And like you said, when, like there's going to come a choke point in the economy where people are like, we're not giving you fucking our Bitcoin, right? Because we don't want to spend it. Yeah. But it's not that we don't want to spend it. It's like, I don't want a fucking 1,000 SPACs, right? How many of these shit companies got $100 million backers because these fucking Wall Street gurus are willing to throw fucking billions of dollars at anything, right? Because they don't care because they're getting free fucking cheap money. And if they get 1 out of 10 right, it pays for the next 100. So like it incentivizes you to look at the businesses that are getting pushed out in there. And like you're less incentivized to rip people off because the rewards aren't there. It's not free fucking money. Like, so pay attention, do your research. It makes everything better. It gets rid of the shitty fucking businesses. It gets rid of the weak, right? It audits itself, right? So it regulates our own government. They don't just get to fucking print money out of thin air and debase the wealth of your nation. And, we see El Salvador doing it. Now, the biggest question that we kind of covered this morning in the show, but you had a really good take on it, was what if power goes out? That's what I hear from so many new people. It's like this one fallacy, right? I don't know what the analogy would be. But like when you have 1,000 signs that are saying, hey, this is the right thing. And then you have that one thing go like, Donald Trump said, grab her by her pussy. So you're worried about a fucking mean tweet versus fucking paying $4 for a gallon of gas and every other great thing Trump did. You're not going to vote for this man because of that. So you're not going to buy Bitcoin because you're afraid the fucking power goes out. And you went off on this rant, man. And it was like, dude, bro, if you fucking power goes out, you ain't going to need fucking gold. Tell us about it.
Well, that was okay. So that actually was born of looking at kind of reality, and this was not a. I'm not full disclosure. I'm not a big prepper. I'm a realist, and I work in electricity, among other things. I drive a semi truck. I do all kinds of shit. I do like a bunch of things to stay alive because you have to nowadays.
Wow.
And my in my experience in the electrical industry, I work with electricians and I work with customers, and the customers, most people never, most of us, we take electricity completely for granted. We don't think about electricity as we're going to go ahead and, you don't think about it until the power goes out. Then it becomes a big priority, right? Because, and of course, the longer it's out, the bigger the priority it becomes. It slowly starts working its way up your pyramid. And then after about, especially if you're like me and you've got a couple $1,000s worth of beef in your freezer, right? That starts becoming something very serious to you because it's a lot of money that you're going to lose. Yep. Worth of your food. And so when I point out, that the idea where there's this, whenever I hear these guys that they'll say things like, well, what if the whole grid goes out on the whole world? And I'm like, man, if that happens, Bitcoin is not your problem at that point, nor is gold, nor is any of that stuff. Your number one problem is going to be clean water, because most water is pulled out of the ground with electricity. Yep. And it takes an enormous amount of electricity. Like your household generator is not going to pull water out of the ground on a large enough scale. I mean, you're going to have to worry about ice pirates, like literally. I mean, you're going to have to worry about shit like that. Like, and within about 15 to 30 days, you got to worry about goddamn cannibals at that point. Because think of all the food spoilage that you have because of refrigeration. I mean, like refrigeration. I mean, this is just one of these things. Like, electricians and refrigeration and plumbing have saved more lives in this world than any 5,000 doctors put together. Yes, I mean, it's spectacular. When it's really mind-boggling when you think about it.
Sanitation. Mm-hmm.
Refrigeration keeps food fresh for a long time, which means you're able to actually you don't have to consume it right away. And most people don't know how to salt all their meat and store it and everything. It's like these are things. So.
And imagine trying to learn that shit without the internet.
Oh, yeah. And that's it. And we take that for granted, right? We take that. That's exactly. I'm glad you brought that up, because now it's like, oh, well, no big deal. I'll just go on YouTube and learn how to do this. There is no YouTube. There is no internet. There's no electricity. So there's none of that. And there's no communications at this point. So all those people that we're used to just communicating with, just across the country, across the globe, right? That's gone. It's just poof. And
it might not be a bad idea to advise people to print some of that shit off, right? Like how to can meat.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean,
you guys print that out, laminate it?
From a prep standpoint, it's probably not a bad idea to print something like that off and have it be a hard copy. Or if you have like maybe a portable generator or something that you can work for a while. Once again, the guys who's like, well, but the generators, I can go to go down to the gas station and get gas. How? Gas stations pump gas with electricity. Like, I mean, like it. When I talk to customers, I try to impress upon them the importance of understanding that we don't think about it until it's gone. And electricity is one of those things that is we have gotten so used to as a civilization. So we're not just talking about here in the US, we're talking about like planet Earth as a whole has gotten so used to it. And the idea is, we could organize and build back the infrastructure. Do you realize the logistical nightmare that would be? And you don't have electricity to smelt new steel. Mm-hmm. So I mean, the task you're talking about would take years to undo that. So I point out, like, if if planet Earth were to lose electricity, gold, Bitcoin, all that stuff, that is not anywhere near. That's not even going to be on your radar at that point. So your best bet is to hope that electricity never goes away, because that will be a significantly bad experience for all of us, and probably cost 80% of the population, frankly. I mean, just anybody who needs medications. Remember, medications, a lot of them have to be refrigerated. Yep.
Pharmacies will be the first thing. Like if we lose power, you should probably be at that pharmacy within 3 days, or at least keeping your eye on it. So when it starts to get looted, if you need medication from there, you get it then, or you ain't getting it.
Go loot it. Go loot it, because it ain't gonna matter anyway. And so when you really stop to think about it, this is one of these things that it is a deep conversation. And I realize I'm kind of a deep thinker, and so it's what I do. When you drive a semi truck, you think about a lot of shit because you have a lot of time to read a lot of books and think. You have lots and lots and lots of time. It's like being on Alcatraz. Okay, I mean, you got a lot of time on your hands, and that is one of the things. So the idea to use this excuse of like, well, but Bitcoin, electricity, like that's actually for me that's actually a fairly weak excuse. And it's because like if we lose power, you have much bigger problems to worry about. We better not lose power. So let's assume that we don't, and let's hope for the best on that. In the meantime, you're still going to want the harder of the two. Now, I tell anybody, pick a hard currency. I don't care what it is, knowing full well that the hardest currency, if you're starting to look for hard currencies, I know what you're going to end up at. I know where you're going to end up every single time.
Yes,
if you're looking, if you start looking for hard currency. So I mean, if someone says, well, but I want gold for my work, that's fine. You can do that, absolutely, and it'll work until you get a gold coin that you think is gold and it's a slug. That's and there's already counterfeit gold everywhere. I mean, I'm sure that within if the dollar were to collapse tomorrow morning, there would be counterfeit gold all over the street within about I would say 2 days. Within 48 hours, thered be counterfeit gold everywhere.
Yeah, people are already stocking it.
I'm sure there already are
stocking it, waiting for this to happen.
Yep. And if that happens, there will be counterfeit gold everywhere. And so I'm not, and so this is my, that's why, of course, I mean, there was an old video I did. I talked about this way back in the financial physics videos. I want to say like session 3 or 4. I pointed this out where it's like most people are not going to carry around a bar scale, an acid kit, a file, a core sample drill. They're not going to do that. Nope. So that they can go to the grocery store. Now, I'm perfectly okay with going, full outlaw Josie Wales on this and carrying around a little bag of gold dust and everything. Mm-hmm. That's great, but most people aren't going to do that. They're, do that. We've got grown adults now that can't count back change, mm-hmm. And by the way, I don't say that as from a perspective of I say that from a perspective of actual empathy. Because I think that that's horrible that so many people have been kind of let down, in that regard. And, but so the amount of people who would be taken advantage of would be just, I mean, it would make everybody bitter husks. And in the case of something like Bitcoin, which is where I come back to, and I just point out, in the case of Bitcoin, you don't require a third party. People will rush to third parties. I'm not picking on Peter Schiff. I mean, hey, I like Peter Schiff. He's a good guy. But when it comes to gold, it's like, well, yeah, people are gonna run to third parties inevitably. And once again, we have that same third party problem. We're right back where we started. Yeah. Where it's like, well, we could just issue more gold certificates than there is gold. And
sure, damn right.
With the best of intentions, and you're right back in the rat race. And there was a Texit video I talked about that too. So.
No, man, I've been showing your YouTube over here while you're talking in your Twitter, man. This is such a great conversation, and people don't really realize too. So let's say, it's a false flag attack. It's the CIA. They take out infrastructure just in America, or maybe America, Mexico, and Canada. Right? We kind of all in this together. You're talking about
like the grid or something. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we get a grid attack. Like power goes out just here. Like it's gonna suck for us. Like right, if we even got like they sent some of these migrants are really CIA agents, right? And they're going to be all stationed out at every major power grid with long rifles and just same time, same place. We lose grid, and we don't even have the ability or resources to replace those. Like these large scale generators aren't even produced in America. So some of these power grids go down. Like we're relying on the countries that hate us to actually give us the equipment and the tools and the shit. We don't produce them here anymore because of fucking government bureaucrats, right? So
it's absolutely horrible. It's criminal. That's totally criminal.
Worst case, right? Power goes out everywhere. But the second it comes on, right? The second some type of civilization resurfaces, the blockchains turn back on, right? Like you can go and verify that nothing changed. The Bitcoin blockchain will start right back up and we'll be right back to where we left off at. But imagine trying to move around. Correct. If you got like me, right? I have like about 10K in gold, right? I could probably get away, move through borders, hide this gold, whatever. In silver, it's not much. But you're talking about moving 100,000. Like you're talking about Nazi Germany when the Jews were trying to escape, the wives were melting down gold and silver, turning it into hangers, right?
Yeah.
And then making
hangers,
clothes
buttons,
on them.
all kinds of shit.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And they were carrying these hangers and people didn't realize it, but they were really smuggling out their wealth because that's the only option they had. Now, you try to smuggle $100,000 out of here, like, right? Mexico is building the wall. People are fucking dumb. They think that the United States is the only one. No, Mexico's building the wall. And you see these construction like where it's like, oh yeah, Mexico's paying for this. Like, wait, what? Like, oh yeah, Mexico funded this wall because they don't want them back. Fucking idiots. People have no fucking clue. Like, We took 4 million migrants from November 15th to January 1st. I was talking to me and Axel were talking about this before we started. The another caravan's marching here right now, 5 million. The next one will be 6 and then 10. We're gonna take 20 million more people just before the 2024 election. So we were kind of talking like when we have a full breakdown of society, there's 2 different types of breakdowns. We talked about this right before we went live, right? There's one where, okay, banks collapse like '08, right? And who are we going to hold account? Who would Americans be going out headhunting, right? Not like trying to hurt anybody, but like out protesting outside of your house, like pissed off that you just destroyed the wealth of our entire nation, right? The bankers and the politicians. That's doable. Like we can go into a 2020 Great Depression or 2040s Great Depression style, right? 30s, 40s, where it sucks for 10 years, but we come out of it stronger and our country is better for it. And that would be where we would replace basically the dollar with a Bitcoin standard kind of thing. Now you talk about, we have 40 million military age males, high T alpha males that don't call 911. These people are coming from the poorest countries in the world. They don't know what 911 is. Like the fact that they even made it to 21 is a feat. Their life expectancy in some of these places is like 35, 40 years old, right? These kids were killing people at 8 years old, like an initiation by their uncle, raping women by the time they were 11. Now this little kid's going to be sitting in school with your son and goes, oh yeah, where's your back? Oh yeah, he took my backpack. You go to take the backpack back from him and you end up with a broken finger or a broken neck or your hand gets cut off by like the paper cutters in school. Like it's going to get bad. Women are walking in New York. Dude, this lady just got jacked in the face walking down the street in New York by some random freaking dude, most likely a migrant, right? Right. And then we see migrants attacking
I saw
cops.
that actually, yeah.
And it's like, dude, like people don't know. Like, right. So like, I think the option of like scenario 1 playing out is very unlikely. And they're at a point where they know that there's no way that they can beat Trump, right? There's no court case. There's no take him off the ballot.
I don't think so, no.
So, and they know that when Trump comes back into office, they're all going to prison. Or a vast fucking majority of them. At least that's the impression that we see. That's what the people I think are going to be demanding.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, but in reality, it might not, right? Like Hillary's going to go to jail in 2020 and never did. But hopefully Trump learned from his mistakes, right? Like you can't, like when you got to cut a snake off at the head, period, right? Because if you don't, if you chop its tail off, it's going to go breed. It's going to have more little snakes, and they're going to come back in and they're going to kill you, right? Like, take me in, tender woman, take me in, and we're fucked, right? So where do you see this playing out at?
I hope you're right.
Where do you see this
I hope
playing
you're
out
right
at?
about that. Well, which part?
Like what we're getting invaded. Like I think we can stop saying briefly we're not getting invaded.
That's
so what is the big picture? They're building FEMA camps everywhere, right? They're building. They have child migrant concentration camps where they got thousands of children locked in these migrant concentration camps. These are kidnapped children. I can take you to their house, right to a building right now that has kidnapped children in it, and our government's just letting this happen. What do you think they're going to do to you? You think they're here to protect you and help you?
That's it. And I think that not to be alarmist about it, the only thing I could think of like this is that I go back to the competency crisis. Did you see that video I did where I talked about the competency crisis?
No, but tell me. I may have.
I've watched there is a video that I did where I talked about the competency issue, which is where we have the slow degradation of pretty much everything, and you have the most incompetent people, that are being put in positions of being put in positions of being in charge of things. And this does 2 things. Number 1, it's very demoralizing to anybody who is competent. That's number 1. Number 2, it's because they're obedient. And who does government want? Government bankers, politicians, like who do they want? They want obedience. They don't want independent thought. They don't want, as evidenced by who did the Bolsheviks, the Bolshevists, who did they murder? The smart people.
Yep.
And that's exactly who they went after. Pol Pot, when in Cambodia in the killing fields. The lady who cuts my hair, actually, she's from Cambodia. She's about 10 years or so older than I am, and she lived in Cambodia during the Khmer Rouge, and she buried half her village. She buried her parents. I don't know how the hell she tells the story. I mean, it's hard to listen to the story. I don't know how the hell she tells it, but and where they just went in, they would just murder people who had glasses, because the impression was, oh, they have glasses, they're smart. No, that's not true, but but that was the impression. And this is how they. So the competency issue comes into play, I think, on this. And I frankly don't think that they have the most competent people. I really don't. I don't think they have the most competent people that can pull this off. And this is where I would say that this is where I'm actually. I think that you're right. I think that they may try to do something like this, but these are not exactly the brightest bulbs that they could have found to run any of this shit. And it's because, I mean, you can look at the way that what was it? There was that, my God, there was that cop that was all pissed off at somebody, and he goes and he hits him in his car for honking or something like that. Like, this is the level of people they're hiring. Just low grade morons.
Yep.
This is what they're hiring. And that is probably going to be our saving grace. is in other words, it's sort of like never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that we have an enormous amount of I think we have an enormous amount of incompetency. I think they're going to try this. And the competent men that are out there, and there are a lot of us, but what are most competent men doing? They're doing effectively the John Galt thing, not to over abuse that analogy, but I think that's what they're doing, a lot of guys. There's I can think of a couple of them off the top of my head right now. These are guys that are doing low-level Joe jobs now. They've given up. They're like, fuck it. Why would I go work in corporate America and to try and make a bunch of money there and deal with that kind of stress for not nearly enough compensation when I can just do, a low-level Joe job and, whatever. I don't give a shit. And there's a ton of people that are like that now. And I think there is more people that are in the world, I think, that are starting to see this, and so I think that they could try it. And I think that to an extent it'll succeed in like major urban areas. Oh yeah. I mean, I think that because they're just, you've got a bunch of people in an area, it's like, a fish in a barrel kind of situation. But there was a old interview, and I can't remember the name of this guy. He was, I think he was, he was one of the, I don't know, he was an analyst or something. Anyway, but he was a military analyst, and he pointed out, he said that the idea of his analogy was planning to ride a tiger is not the same as riding a tiger. You can have a great plan, but until you go do it, it's probably not going to go the way you think. And I think that no matter what happens, nobody is ready for what's coming. I don't care who you are. I don't think anybody can prep for any of this stuff. I don't think there's any way to prep for it, except for maybe mentally, and just know that what you're going to see is probably some of the most outlandish, crazy fucking horseshit that you've ever seen in your life. Just like what you mentioned. You just mentioned this, where it's like 20 years ago, we would have never thought that there would be just some woman walking down the street and then just some random, illegal attacks her. And, that would be huge news. Oh, and nobody does anything, right?
Men would have beat his ass.
He'd have been beaten to a pulp, especially after like 9/11. Oh my God.
Oh my God, dude.
That dude probably wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, if the guy survived it, and especially if someone said, he was saying Allah Akbar or whatever, oh my God, you'd have 50 guys.
Hunting him down.
That's not the case now. Now we have, and I don't know what to make of it. If it really is truly, I think that a lot of it has to do with, you mentioned, for example, the J6 people. There has never been anybody who's actually, I've never heard any of these big pundits, these guys with huge audiences. I've never heard Trump, even, for that matter. By the way, I have a fair amount of criticism of Trump that have nothing to do with grab him by the pussy. It has to do with more policy related issues.
Yep.
But the issue is, like, you've got these January 6 people, and who, in my estimation, didn't really. I mean, it's a bunch of people who got angry and pissed off and broke a few things and what have you. But it was fairly short lived. They didn't Ferguson DC. They didn't Gaza DC. They should have. They probably should have, but they didn't do it. Yeah. And instead, these people are sitting in prisons. And there hasn't been anybody who said, that's it, God damn it, we're going to go break them out, missing in action style. Where is Chuck Norris when you need him the most, right?
Yeah.
Or Rambo, going in to take out the POWs, get them out of there. Nobody's done that in the U.S. You know, in fact, I mean, and I'm pretty hardcore about this kind of stuff because I say that no, I mean, like, why hasn't any of these big pundits said anything about this? Why not? You know, especially like, well, but there's law and order, and this is, and then of course that's my biggest, probably the single biggest criticism I have is when I hear, I want to choke somebody when I hear this bullshit about law and fucking order, because there's two laws in this universe, the laws of, or this on this planet, two laws only, and that's the laws of physics and laws of conscience. Everything else is somebody's fucking opinion, and we have a whole country full of people that have, in good conscience, allowed all of this shit to happen. Clearly, clearly, in good conscience, they've allowed all of this shit to happen, and I'm critical of boomers as a result of that, because for 54 years they were the largest goddamn block of voters. They outvoted their parents. They've outvoted their kids. Now you have to have Gen X, millennials, and Zoomers. Assuming you could get all three of those generations to lock arms and actually vote for something, you might be able to outvote them, because they're still a huge block by themselves. And this idea when they push law and order, it's like, stop. What we have now is neither law nor order, from what I can tell. It's random, whoever the fuck gets in charge, and then starts making a bunch of declarations. You know, I mean, when we had the bridge in Baltimore, right? That just happened. And Biden comes out and says, the federal government's going to pay for all that. You have no authority to do any of that shit. Like, none. What the fuck? Where is this coming from? Like, no. Like, first of all, that's the insurance company should be going bankrupt paying for that. Not the taxpayers. We shouldn't be dealing with that. But this is the kind of thing. So when they say this kind of stuff, it's where I become fairly critical of someone like a Trump, because of how wildly popular he actually is. And because of his wild popularity, I don't know why he's putting up with all this bullshit. All these lawsuits and everything. I don't know why the fuck he's putting up with this. Like, I would have told him to pound fucking sand. I'd have said, dude, fuck you. Come and get me.
Arrest me.
I have Secret Service protection, man.
I agree. I couldn't fucking agree more. I'm so done with it, dude. Lead a fucking march on Washington. Martin Luther King did it. Get a people behind you, and we'll show this country. We'll make it so abundantly clear that the fake news can't fucking hide it. Every law enforcement agent from every fucking city will come and be your personal security. Cops from all across the world will come and keep this peaceful, right? Every National Guard, we'll all call in sick. We'll take off. We'll shut our country down, and we will fucking march on Washington right behind you. Put him in a limo, right? Like, get his, whatever the one is with the fucking bulletproof and bomb-proof, right? Keep him in
the
that.
Pope-mobile,
build a glass thing on top of on top of the sunroof, so Trump can stand out. We can all see him. He rolls in his limo. We fucking march with him, right? And let's fucking go do this, dude. Let's go take our country back. We're so fucking sick. $1.2 trillion so that they can chop off the nuts of an 8-year-old funded with your tax dollars. It is so, it's atrocious, man. And the fact that we've let this happen.
It defies commentary.
No law is going to fix this, right? No politician is going to save you, right? We either shut this shit down or they kill us all. It is that simple.
No. It is starting to come down to that. There are definitely some lines that are starting to draw on, and there's definitely lines that are getting crossed, no question. And the only thing I would say, just from the philosophical side, would be just make sure everybody has to make sure what you want to replace it, which is always my concern. Is like, okay, I'm all about revolution and change. I'm all about it, but we have to ask ourselves, what do we want in place of it? And of course, my position has always been the same. Like, why don't we just go back to the Constitution and open the goddamn thing and read it, and understand that there's a lot of genius there, and the genius of it is the idea of negative rights, saying we're never going to agree on what we want. You and I will never agree on everything. It's just never going to happen. It's never going to happen. We can agree on a bunch of stuff, but we will never agree on everything. And that means that we can agree on a handful of things that we don't want. For example, we don't want government or bureaucracies or veiled, so-called private corporations inhibiting free speech. We can agree that we don't want that. Now we can argue about what we do want all day long, but we can agree we don't want on that. We can agree that we don't want government being able to take away the rights of people to defend themselves. Left or right, center, doesn't make any difference. I don't care how left somebody is. I don't care how many goddamn felonies they have. You don't want that being messed with. You want people to be able to defend themselves, and you want to make sure that we don't want the government involving themselves in that. So just those two, for example. And if there's a clear focus, in other words, knowing when to stop, it's sort of like, the idea of like sacking a city. You're the army. You're going to go sack the city, and you have to know when to stop.
Yeah.
And like say, okay, we achieved our goal. That's it. We don't now. We back off. We just wanted to achieve our goal here, and that's the only part. Rather than have the pendulum swing so far the other way that it becomes a disaster the other direction. Because once again, it'll always come back to the currency issue, and someone will always say, "Well, with best of intentions, let's do it this way." And it's like I said, I mean, I think about it in terms of, I guess you could say, I think of it like a statesman would think of it. That, we want to have, have to have a clear focus of what we want to do and know what the job is, and then work the job is completed, not keep going and make life horrible the other direction to where everything is criminalized the other direction now. Yep. We don't want to have that. I may not want pink hair, but I don't think there should be a law that somebody can't have pink hair. Yep. As an example. Yep. And so it's not libertopia. It's just I guess you could call me a constitutional moderate, meaning that like I think that some amount of this is okay, but not anywhere near what we have now. 80 plus million goddamn laws. That, come on, this is
you're not free. You become a
fucking
slave.
Everybody's a criminal. Everybody's a criminal. It just depends on if they want to look hard enough. What was that old KGB saying? Bring me the man, I'll show you the crime, or something like that. I mean, that's how it works, right? You just create so goddamn many laws that nobody can possibly not be a multiple felon many times over, if they want to look hard enough, and if they want to get rid of you. And so yeah, I mean, but I'm with you on that. Yeah, I think that if there was any of these big accounts or people like Trump or these big names like that were actually serious about it, and it's scary, absolutely, but the goal would be to not then rub it in on the other side. That's just where I come in. Like I am not without compassion. I'm not without empathy, especially to the millions of people who don't follow any of this shit. Right. They don't like the millions of people, like it's strange too, because like when we do podcasts, not just podcasts like this, but like any show where we talk about like especially we have these deep conversations about like the deeper levels of politics and the deeper levels of the philosophy behind the country. We always forget, I think a lot of us, that there are tens of millions of people who don't think about any of this shit at all. Like no one thinks about this stuff. Yep. And it's not even on their radar. And they would have no clue what the fuck just happened. They'd be like, what happened? Yep. 100%. It's hard to think of it like that, but there's just millions of people who would have no clue. They'd be like, there was a march? What the hell? These people are all gone and ejected out of office, and now we're going to have paper elections, paper ballots in person. Yeah. I saw a tweet today. Was it Rothmus, or I cannot remember. Anyway, there's somebody on Twitter who posted this, and he posted the list of countries that have banned mail-in ballots because of fraud. And it's like basically every country has banned it. We're like the oddball that allows mail-in ballots. All of Latin America, Mexico, all of them, like you have to show up in person. And do a vote. Because of all of the fraud that used to exist back in the day.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I honestly, and everybody else in the live chat's absolutely loving this, guys. If you guys are enjoying this content, please swing down there and actually make sure that thumbs up turns green over on Rumble. I'm sure it's red, or on YouTube. I'm sure it's red or whatever. But swing over to Rumble and follow us on Rumble, because who knows how long we're going to have these conversations over on YouTube before they decide to take us down. So that's definitely swing over there. But
I hope I'm being entertaining at least to everybody and stuff too. I don't do this professionally, so
this is a phenomenal conversation. I think these are the conversations that like a lot of Americans are having now, right? Like these are just normal conversations that we wouldn't have been having 5 or 10 years ago. It seems like it. What is your? Let's wrap it up on this. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, let's wrap it up. We've been going for about an hour and a half now. I want to be respectful of your time, and I got my little man here. So let's give us your expectations for Bitcoin on the next I don't know, like before the 2024 election, where you expect Bitcoin to be? And then long term, let's say a couple of years from now, where do you think Bitcoin's going to be?
Boy, that's a tough one. I hadn't really thought of it, but I'll give you just kind of my speculation.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, near term, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if Bitcoin starts pushing the 80 to 90,000 mark near term. I do think there is some of the halving is somewhat, some of it is priced in already. There's some people that are already a lot of folks buying on spec, kind of like when they did the ETF unveil. I tweeted out the day they did that, actually, about the the ETF, that like this is not going to be the big hit that everybody thinks it's going to be, and of course it wasn't. It came right back down because there were so many people that were buying on spec.
Mm-hmm.
And just to do it as a quick trade, as opposed to, they're like buying Bitcoin based on principle, and like I want to have a currency, etc. And I'm not picking on guys. I'm really not. I'm just pointing out that was what was going on. And so I think that there is some of that too that's coming up because of the halving that's due in what, like not even a month. It's
like 20-something days now.
20. Yeah, it's like we're down 25 or so days and then counting. But I wouldn't be surprised if it gets up into the 80, 90,000 mark pretty quickly. Yep. And then before the 24 elections, man, that's a tough one. I think that it's gonna, there's just so many factors with it, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if it actually does get up into the six figures. Well, and especially of course, if you do have, what the Black Rocks of the world and your hedge funds, what are they taking off the exchange every day? I mean, do you know? I know. Last I heard, it was like a lot. It was like many thousands per day.
Yeah. So they think the highest was around 7,500. Which, to put that into perspective, the Bitcoin miners are only mining 900 a day. The only thing that seems to be offsetting it right now is Grayscale. They're outrageous fees. So basically, people are selling their Grayscale and they're moving it into BlackRock. So even though BlackRock's buying a massive amount, it's kind of offsetting what Grayscale is putting out. But there's going to come a point where that stops, right? And that hemorrhaging stops, and then it's like, for the first time in 9 years, Bitcoin put in a new record low on exchanges for the amount of Bitcoin that's left on these exchanges. It's down to 1.9 million from 2.75 million less than a year ago. So it's pretty amazing watching, almost over 1 million coins have been taken off exchange in the last year and a half, which is pretty impactful. And like you said, they're going to keep buying. So go ahead. I'll let you finish what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think that's all I was going to point out was that I think they're probably going to keep buying. Obviously, they're gonna just, well, I mean, they're not even, they're using other people's money on this, so they have virtually infinity to buy, and there will come a time, and I think that this is where there's been a few other people that have speculated this, but sooner or later, some country somewhere is going to figure out that they can actually print money to buy Bitcoin. The question I still come back to, and this goes to what I was saying earlier, is that how many people are going to eventually refuse to work unless they're paid in hard currency? And by the way, in my view, that's when the rubber really meets the road. I think that's one of the reasons why it's one of the chief reasons I think that they're importing all the illegals, is to keep this dollar propped up, because Americans are getting so pissed off, and more people. There's an inevitable communication that's happening between all of us, and you see it on TikTok. At least I see it on TikTok. People are getting more angry. Now, they don't know what they're angry about yet. They haven't got there yet, but they know they're angry, and they know that they go to the goddamn grocery store and they're like, what the fuck? I just spent $680 for my family for 2 weeks. And like, why is it $680 when it should be $325 or whatever it is? Mm-hmm. And the more and more people that see this, right, it becomes a feeding frenzy, and it becomes like people start, it's okay. In other words, it gives them it gives other people permission to talk about these things, right? I mean, like, this is just sort of how that works. You've got, somebody is willing to say, hey, man, because it's sort of like the social media thing, where like you want to show always your best foot forward. Right. So they give people to take like 600 pictures to find the one picture, and then they post that one. Well, that's how we all are, to an extent. Right. We don't want people to think that, man, we're broke and unhappy. Well, there's a bunch of people now that are going on the internet and they're saying, dude, I'm broke and unhappy. And it's giving permission for other people to say, yeah, what the fuck? What's up with this? Why am I broke and unhappy too? And it's giving more and more people to start openly having these very serious discussions about money. And this is so healthy. This is so healthy for people to do this. And what that I think is going to slowly give way to is people like you, people like me, others out there that are starting to say, hey, here's this idea, Bitcoin, you can save your money here. You can, it's a currency and it's private and you can give it to somebody else. And there's fuck all the government can do about it. There's nothing they can do about it. Nothing. Yep. They can be upset. That's it. And when and you circumvent all in fact, my banker actually, he was asking me about Bitcoin. I was explaining it to him because he was telling me about the transaction he was doing and how long it was taking for it to go to the clearinghouse, then go to the Fed, then go on and on. And I said, yeah, Bitcoin solves that. And I was just joking. I was just making a joke, right? And he's like, well, how does it work? And I explained it to him just briefly. I'm by no means an expert, but I just explained to him the idea, and he's like, that's amazing. He says, you mean it only cost you, what the hell? What did I move? Like $20,000 worth of Bitcoin, and it would, like $8 or something like that. He's like, that's amazing. He's like, dude, that's like not even possible in banking. That's just not even realistic. The fees are fucking crazy.
Fill out paperwork to move over 10 grand, and you got to get approved, and fucking IRS.
Oh yeah,
and all the fuck. It's a joke. Spend more than 10 grand.
And this circumvents the shit out of all of that. And so it's only a matter of time. Where I was going with that is only a matter of time before people start actually putting that together. And I think that and I pointed this out. So when you brought up all the illegals, and this is you just reminded me of this.
Yep.
All these illegals that are being brought into the country. Do you think they give a fuck about inflation? No. They don't give a fuck about. They don't give a shit how much money's going to Israel. They don't care. They don't care how much money's going to Ukraine. They don't give a fuck about any of this stuff. What they care about is that the dollar goes further in their countries, and so they're okay with that, and that will prop that shit up. And
they know that they're giving these illegal dollars, right?
Yep.
And they're exporting them to these other countries.
What they're
it's
doing.
Fucking brilliant, dude.
They know exactly what they're doing with this, and they know that $10,000 that they give some fucking illegal is going to make its way right back to Wall Street. They know. They know They know that's exactly where it's going to go. It's going to go for to this mega franchise, which is owned by a mega franchise, which is owned by this corporation, which is owned by this corporate. It's going to. They know all that money's going to make its way right back to Wall Street. It's not going to end up in the hands of some mom and pop, right? Mom and pop are fucked. They're done. They're long gone.
Yep, they're gone.
This is going to. They're going to create a closed loop system within your own country.
Bullshit.
And
that's wild.
And it's really fucked up when you think about it. What they're doing here, that it's like you won't be able to get, and on top of that, that's especially with all of these things now they openly do this. What was that Tyson, right? Openly comes out and says, yeah, that's it, fuck it, we're firing all these Americans because they're too goddamn expensive. We're gonna get people in here to do this shit for cheap, and Americans should be fucking insanely pissed. They should be incensed at this, that this would even happen. And and even if they are angry, they're not angry enough in my estimation over something like that.
Yeah. And I Bud Lighted. I threw all my Tyson shit out. I'll never fucking buy Tyson ever again. That company's dead. Yeah. It's bankrupt to me. And that's the way we need to live. But guess where they're going to get? Guess who's going to get all the contracts to feed all these migrants, these 40 million people? Every migrant processing facility is getting the fucking kickbacks from the government.
Exactly.
Yep.
And all these and all the fast food restaurants, all these mega franchises that have chicken sandwiches. Where do you think they're going to get their chicken from? This is exactly the problem with this. And so it really is almost like a decoupling has to take place. Americans have to reject effectively corporatism, and what's weird is that it sounds like a hippie, sort of like a hippie trippy kind of conversation. It's all the fault of the corporations, man. Stop.
Yeah,
it sounds like that, but it's fucking true. Look at what they've done, and it's so toxic what they've done. To say nothing of like the chemicals in the food, or like, dude, I just take not even talking about that. Just the toxicity of what they've done to the culture, and then supporting all of this shit, supporting the open invasion of the country. No, Americans should absolutely be pissed, and so yeah, I mean, I would like to think that we see something happen with it. We'll see what happens.
I'm so, it was an honor to have you on the show, really, Axel. And make sure you guys swing over again. I've been sharing, links are all down in the description. You can swing over here, follow him on X as well. He's putting out daily videos, or I don't want to speak for him, but daily videos, but he's putting out a lot of content. I don't know how exactly often he is. He also has a YouTube channel as well over here. He's crushing it over on TikTok as well. It's financial physics. And then we're going to get him over on Rumble too, because he definitely needs to be putting that stuff up on Rumble. Because
I'm on Rumble. I just don't have a lot of, I don't have a lot of following on Rumble.
Oh, there we go. Let's follow my man over on Rumble.
I didn't, my wife had told me that Rumble has an app, and I said, they have an app? I didn't know this for the longest time. And I said, oh, well, I'll start uploading content there. So I just like 2 days ago started putting, started the transition of taking these videos and putting them on Rumble. It's going to take a while before they all get
follower
out
number
there.
2. Let's go.
But
I'm going to share the link in the live chat right now.
I had like 1 follower, I think, on Rumble. So
I'm number 2. You got 2 now.
That was it. Cool. That's super cool.
Go.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, man. Well, Axel, thank you so much for coming on the show, buddy. We greatly appreciate you.
Anytime.
And be safe out there. And you got my link. You got my Calendly now. So if you fucking go on a rant one day, you're like, fuck, I want to go talk to more people and rant on fucking Ryan show. Just book it. You don't have to ask. Just come on anytime you want. You're always welcome, buddy. And I greatly appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
God bless you, man. All right, folks, that's a wrap. Make sure you guys swing down there and smash that like button. Go over and follow Axel on all of his networks, man. He's absolutely crushing it out there. He's a great, really critical thinker, and I think that's going to inspire more people. So when you guys go and follow people like him, it incentivizes them to put out more content. And these are the people that we want putting out more content. So that way we bog down the system when we just destroy the woke mind virus one logical market actor at a time. So God bless each and every one of you guys. Keep stacking that Bitcoin. God bless you. We'll catch you guys in the next one. We out. Peace.
Run.